So I've been having a little mini argument with one of the posters, and I've been arguing with other people about my economic videos I posted recently. But I want you to know that I strongly believe that people are missing the key signs, they're not interpreting things correctly, and that fundamentally there's a strong difference between Main Street and Wall Street. We had to talk about jobs, what kind of jobs they really are, what they mean. We still have an eviction crisis looming. This all takes time to roll through court, roll through all the stats and signs for them to be noticed. I used to work in a municipal courthouse. I've seen how evictions work. Landlords are not rich. A lot of landlords around the country have one or two properties. It all takes time. After it's all gone through court and all that other stuff, can take a year or years. And yes, we've been in a pandemic and a pandemic recovery and all that. Isn't COVID over? I don't know. Seems like it is. GDP shrank. Aren't we out of COVID? Now it shrinks. The indicators lag behind, particularly on energy prices, the effects on production, the effects on inflation. I say this inflation we have now is caused by the tremendous amount of money that was poured into the U.S. economy. And yes, the world did this too. And yes, the world is hurting. Do we not get goods from all over the country, all over the world? Do we not exchange our goods with other countries of the world? If they're in energy poverty and can't afford their bills, are they going to be buying as much goods from us? Even in normal times, the U.S. economy is confusing. Add in the latest debate, perplexing even the experts on whether we're in a recession right now, and you'll be scratching your head for sure. Not helping the confusion is economists pushing back against the long relied on recession rule of thumb, 2 straight quarters of decline in economic activity, reflected in gross domestic product. Are we in a transition? You're just going to play to the other numbers and ignore the term. It's like, well, that's not what we think it is. To be sure, joblessness hasn't been this rare since the 1960s. Employers have added 3.3 million jobs so far this year, and businesses are instant creating almost 11 million more, none of which are symptoms of a downturn. Yeah, but they could be symptoms of a big shutdown, everybody was laid off, they got all their unemployment, they're onto a new job. How is that creating jobs? Just the idea that the pandemic didn't cause mass unemployment and this is a boost from that it's ridiculous to ignore. Consumer spending adjusted for inflation, rising just 0.3% on average so far this year compared to the close of 1%. Yep, okay. The ultimate risk, however, is what happens from here. Nearly 3 in 4 Americans in a February Bankrate poll say they've cut back on spending and dip into their savings in the face of those higher prices. Borrowing at all-time highs. Aren't most credit card borrowers going to be paying that 28% interest anyway? So what are we talking about when we're talking about interest rates? Well, it's going to be things like home mortgages and things like that. People trying to buy a house. And what's the Fed going to do? They're going to try and knock that kind of stuff down. They're borrowing, they're going to end up paying it back at a higher rate, if they can pay it back. We're still in some of the worst food shortages ever. We still have supply chain issues. Food bank usage way up. Food is rising much more than inflation indicators show because you can average things all across the cost of goods increasing. But I can attest that food has gone up at least 30% in my area for the stuff that I bought. I can absolutely tell. The real world consequences mean something. When you go and you buy all those cheap alternatives all the time, but now you go and those aren't available because more people are buying those cheap alternatives. I've got to buy not even the regular priced one, but I've got to buy a more expensive one because that's the only one available. So does my food costs go up? You betcha. We've experienced the greatest upward movement of wealth more than any time in history. It went from regular folks who had to close their family business, stop shopping at their local family store, to Amazon where people shopped online for goods, paid higher prices, paid for the shipping, to Amazon. Now the mom and pop shops are closed forever, but everything looks good because the big corporations with stocks on Wall Street, where they draw the data from, look like they're doing fantastic. Until you listen to them, where they say layoffs, store closings, cutting back, it's all coming. More than 50% of them talking about layoffs and hiring freezes. Personal income adjusted for inflation. Consumers have clearly taken a hit amid the fastest price increases in 4 decades. Most people's lifetime, right? A lot of people's lifetime. The highest fastest increases, not only the highest, fastest increases in 4 decades. To keep spending, consumers need money. Even adjusted for inflation, personal income is near an all-time high and has held steady. However, Americans have taken clear hits this year as prices rise by the fastest pace in 4 decades. Real personal income declined in 2 of the past 6 months, and it's declining even further. And I say the inflation and the rate that they calculate inflation, they are wrong. They try to incorporate these other things in there. Income for adjusted for inflation is way down. Period. Rents up, 20% increases. That's devastating. Health insurance up like 24%. Do you know how devastating these are? The highest increases in most people's life, in many people's lifetime. Fed says they're bringing the pain. Not about interest rates being low and now back to normal. What it is it's the fastest change in effect that we've seen. It has an effect on companies, markets, jobs. All the world banks are doing it, synchronized like they haven't been synchronized in 50 years. The higher the rates, the higher the U.S. interest payment on debt is. They can print some more money, mass spending, printing of money. That's what led to high inflation to begin with. They just did more spending. But it's going to be paid for with higher taxes. Okay, we'll see what kind of effect that has when you raise the taxes on somebody. Big corporations, big businesses, they pass that cost on. Along with the crime rate increasing across the world, across the country. As people enter poverty and stuff, they start stealing, committing crimes. How does that affect the prices for a company when they've got to close a bunch of stores in California or your local CVS and stuff? You can't even go and find a place to get your meds because there's not one. You got to drive out of your city because they all closed because they were getting robbed so much. Manufacturing, trade, sales adjusted for inflation. Part of consumption, the committee also tracks wholesale retail sales adjusted for inflation. Officials cite a manufacturing and trade sales report as the best measure, which follows the total value of all goods sold within the U.S. So far, however, those receipts have dropped 3 out of 5 months in the year, similar behavior to previous recessions, though possibly reflecting a post-lockdown reshuffling in spending from goods to services. I'm sure people are just switching over, spending their money from goods to services. So they're not buying groceries. They're not having problems buying groceries and stuff in stores. They're paying someone to have them deliver the groceries to their house. I'm sure that's what it is. It's an energy crisis. Manufacturing activity steady despite headwinds. Manufacturing activity, huh? U.S. output among manufacturers and miners, as well as electrical and gas utility companies, hasn't turned a corner. Production is back at levels seen before the pandemic and even reached an all-time high. The gain, however, was largely fueled by strength in the auto sector. Excluding that jump, production would have increased by a more modest 0.3% in the month. Everything is affected by energy. Affordable and abundant energy is what makes a country wealthy, productive, and the growing price of energy with winter coming, the energy will be higher. We are in a global market. The EU is buying liquefied natural gas from China to avoid getting it from Russia. China is buying it from Russia, shipping it back to EU, charging their higher prices. Russia's still getting their money. Sounds like a good plan to make everything cost more expensive as they shut down coal plants, all that. The world is going to pay a higher price for energy. This will lead to higher inflation and economic instability everywhere. The labor market. 2.5 years later, employers recover all jobs. Not quite as many, but they recover, right? Consumption may keep the economy afloat, but the job market keeps the floor under spending. In other words, the job market is a crucial corner of the financial system to watch when you want to gauge the economy. Talk about more of that in a second. Unemployment rate back at a half-century low. So isn't that great? At a high level, economists say the best slices of the labor market to look at include new and continued applications for unemployment benefits. Unemployment benefits, really. Duration of employment, to see how long people are looking for a job. Well, we know people just had the great job transfer where everybody left and went to other jobs. The number of jobs currently in the economy, along with how many jobs are being created each month. The unemployment rate, which isn't that the number of people looking for unemployment benefits, because that's how they measure it. Number of job openings. Doesn't matter what kind of jobs. So job openings are fading, but still at record highs. What kind of job openings? One caveat, labor market data trends to lag the rest of the economy. During the Great Recession, for example, employers didn't start cutting jobs until 2 months into the downturn. They also kept cutting positions 16 months after the recession had ended. 16 months after the recession had ended. The number of new applications for unemployment benefits has jumped 51% since the Fed's first rate hike on March 16th. So Feds are raising the old rate there. And look at this. July of 2021, 39.4% of the people went more than 27 weeks. And then July, they're saying, oh, look at it, it's way down. Well, what happens when you're unemployed, and you're unemployed that long, is that you no longer show on the unemployment because you are not eligible for unemployment. It ends. Part of the reason why Americans could be finding new jobs so easily is because employers still have a near record number of job openings. To be sure, the number of openings has slowed since the start of the year, down from 11.8 million in March to 10.7 million in June, but there are still close to 2 jobs per every jobless individual. Job openings are fading. I guess our last pandemic recession, we can tell from that the news is great. Oh, that's right, we haven't had anything like this before, so we don't know what to expect. Fewer are employed today than before the pandemic. Does that reflect multiple jobs for the people? The people that have given up? Imagine trying to raise a young child. Someone likely has to stay at home, while the other works 2 jobs. Staying employed, though. What about food stamp numbers? The Army just told their personnel it make apparently less than $22,000 to get on food stamps. The national average salary is less than $54,000. My family income is less. We're hurting bad. I can't imagine $22,000 and you're living in, say, California or New York. Employment is only as good as the income that you get, how you're able to spend it, how you're able to support or not support your family. The price you pay for food as it goes up and up and up affects all of that. The great job change. Major companies are saying they're closing doors, laying off. How do you not pay attention to a major company saying, we're closing doors, we're closing stores, we're laying off? 401ks got hit. Big money, as they call it, doesn't like this market. A recession that isn't a recession. Inflation Recovery Act that isn't an Inflation Recovery Act. Still, supply shortages, even baby formula. Your government's just simply not able to handle this stuff. Is it a thing where people don't want to work? Or is it a job that's available where somebody can't take that job, is not qualified for that job, or they were making a whole bunch of money and now they've got to go get 2 part-time jobs? Your 2 jobs at a restaurant? Hey, unemployment is low, but you're making bank, right? And guess what? Can't collect unemployment because you're making above a certain amount. I mean, just because unemployment claims are down doesn't mean people haven't lost jobs. You can only be on it for so long after you're laid off. If you're not filing, you're not on the unemployment stats. If you're not looking, you're not in the unemployment stats. If you take 2 part-time jobs, you likely can't be approved for unemployment. After all, it doesn't replace your income. These are some of the factors and why immediately after a huge quiet quitting and job change surge, why people are not making unemployment claims. Fired for not taking the jab? I'm sure you don't qualify for unemployment. You've been at a job for a certain amount of time. You might not qualify for unemployment. You just switched jobs. You haven't been working there long enough to claim unemployment. So there's a lot of false assumptions around unemployment, how it works. This is being touted at a time when they try to change the definition of recession. What part of out of touch does it entail when they say you can't afford gas, just buy an EV? Definition changes on key indicators. Inflation by 40-year-ago standards was calculated differently. That was the last time when the records were higher than they are now. If we calculated it the way we did then, we'd be in the double digits. Recession actually entails production, income, employment, and spending. Production, they're telling you it's going down. The companies are telling you it's going down. Income, strained for all the reasons mentioned. Employment, it's misleading. There was a great job change. People are in a different job where they can't claim unemployment if they leave. Job creation will fizzle. Again, the companies are telling us that. The unemployment numbers are misleading stats after a recovery from a pandemic shutdown. Spending, well, it may have switched from goods to services. Everyone I know is hurting financially, moving, having trouble moving, job changes, unable to afford or find a house. Raising interest rates will bring the pain, the Fed says. Well, they brought it already. Inflation is still very high. After they did their things that would lower inflation, still very high. Borrowing is way up. Basic goods are way up. Not extra wants, but necessities. As goods and manufacturing slows and prices increase globally at the same time as EU and the US and even OPEC countries are attacking fossil fuels, they're closing coal and even nuclear power. Energy poverty is going to cause people to die. That's what happens over winters. They cannot heat their homes in the cold and they perish. The inflation was from bailouts, massive spending, and now the energy prices will kick in. Higher energy prices will kick in. People are tapped from the shutdowns. I've called it. Consumer spending will take a nosedive. People know the economy is crap. 4-decade high inflation. The Fed's still trying to raise interest rates. We were in record lows, yes. But what's happening now? Increase. All this while inflation's still going up. Equating it with pain. The effect it's supposed to have is going to crush economic growth. In an attempt to pull money out of the economy, the average people are going to get hurt. Businesses are going to get hurt. You think the average person hasn't refinanced during the lowest interest rates in their lifetime? Instead, it hurts businesses, which in turn raises prices and lays off workers, stops their expansion plans. Things that will lead to even more shortages of goods. I say a depression, which is, I believe, defined as 2 GDP downturns of 20% or more. Some people are telling me I'm dumb and I don't understand these economic indicators and what I'm looking at is the wrong things. But hey, it remains to be seen. This is a simple case of I'll either be proven right or I'll be proven wrong. There's no two ways about it. Whenever this actually hits, I hope I'm wrong. I hope you guys can come back and go, oh yeah, see, you're a dummy. Told you so. I really hope that's the case. But I firmly believe that I'm looking at the right things and this is the way the economy's going and it's not good. And it's going to hurt. It's hurting me already. I can't imagine what it'll be like in another year. And I don't think the Biden administration has a clue on how to handle the economy. They think they can spend their way out of it. And spending is what got us into it. And I'm not letting Republicans off the hook. By all means, they are spending, what are we at, $32 trillion or something like that? The interest payment on that alone, when the interest rate goes up, goes through the roof. That's the government basically is going to print a bunch of money to pay off the bill, and then that causes inflation. And what does inflation do? It hurts the little guy. It charges everyone. And the person that's paying a little bit more for their yacht probably isn't going to notice compared to the person that's, using every cent. They're living on a fixed income, using almost every extra cent to buy their food. Take this or leave this. I don't know. Like I said, I hope I'm wrong.